Today we will be fabricating Coyote's drop-in suction lanyard. Ensure that you're using the C12 small anchor and not one of the other anchors associated with the airlock family from Coyote. You'll need a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter drill bit to be sure to drill your hole for the small anchor. Start by placing your dummy onto the mold. Do not use the actual drop-in suction lanyard as your dummy. Get your correct orientation for where you would like your lock to sit. Trace around your dummy so that as you go to flatten it to install the anchor, this does not become over-flattened and you have the right placement. Do not flatten beyond the trace lines. Mark the center where you plan to drill your hole. And then drill into the center of your model. You only need to drill approximately a 1/2 inch deep. Ensure that your anchor is able to sit all the way down onto the socket. You'll use a Coyote quick 30-second or quick setting epoxy or a wet plaster mix to backfill this hole to be able to set your C12 anchor into it and allow that to cure and harden. By having the dummy on top at this time, it'll allow the weight to make sure that it sets evenly. Once the glue has set, remove the dummy, and you'll want to fill in the void that is slightly in between your plaster model and your anchor. It can be difficult to remove your dummy and anchor if this is not filled in, as plastic could get pulled in between during the check socket fabrication process. Ensure that your anchor is completely cleaned off and there is a very smooth transition between your plaster and the anchor. You will use a nylon for wicking to ensure optimal airflow. You will reflect this nylon around the outside of the anchor. You do not want nylon covering over the O-rings on the anchor. You can add a little bit of lubricant around the O-rings to ensure that it comes off easily when removing, and then placing your dummy over top. Making a slight mark to where the center of your lanyard opening is helpful to ensure that when you're taking the dummy on and off, it's placed back in the right orientation. Some fast setting epoxy can be used to help ensure that the dummy does not come off when doing your fabrication. Adhesive foam dots should be added to the end of the dummy to allow extra spacing for grinding off a flat surface for when you do your final assembly. Lubrication can also be added to the slot dummy for the lanyard strap. You'll want to ensure that the void between the dummy and the model is filled as well, not excessively overfilled, but just that there is no lip to where the plastic could cut underneath your dummy and cause it to be stuck. Make sure you have a good hot piece of plastic that you're using and that you are blister molding it. We do not want to seam these because the seam would cause a way that air could get in and out of the socket and lose the suction benefit for the suction lanyard. So a blister or a drape mold is indicated. Then you'll cut off your trim lines and take it off the model. You want to make sure again that you have a very flat bottom. And then removing the foam pieces will allow you to be able to use the socket extracting tool that Coyote offers. If you do not have a socket extracting tool, then you can do the typical chiseling out of your plaster model or tapping it off. But if you're interested in this product, visit coyote.us to see our offerings for this socket extractor tool. It's a great way to help preserve your plaster models. So now you'll be able to remove the tooling dummy, the piece that goes in for your lanyard slot. So you'll expose that face and then begin finishing your trim lines. Make sure that you've ground this back enough so that you have ease for the patient to be able to slide the suspension lanyard strap in and out. In order to remove the dummy for the lanyard slot, you can press fit in a screw and just thread it in, and then use a pair of pliers to help leverage that piece out. From this point, to get your dummy out, the easiest way to do this is by adding 2 screws diagonally or 4 all around that are slightly longer and bottom out, and tap the dummy straight out of your socket. Any excess glue that was put on your dummy will chip off of it. You do want to add a little bit of rubbing alcohol to your suction lanyard when you go to install it. This will help ensure that it is able to go all the way down into the socket, but you want to draw it down evenly into the bottom of your socket so that you have your suction lanyard sitting very flush. You want to make sure that you pull this down to where it's very flush. When you put your hand inside the socket, you should not be able to feel a lip between the suction lanyard and the socket itself. So you want to see a good even blue compression all the way around on that band. You'll then install your chafe as usual in the typical placement that is most comfortable and appropriate for your patient. We do recommend using a copper rivet to secure this in place, or a Chicago screw with Loctite, and do not recommend using a speedy rivet. Then you'll just want to check the fit of your lanyard strap. So there is a specific strap that correlates with the suction lanyard itself, which has a sealing gasket on the end that is threaded onto the patient's liner. So you can trim this ahead of time if you know that that length will be appropriate for the patient, or you can wait until the patient comes in to trim the appropriate length, just depending on how much leverage and length of that strap that they prefer. So we recommend stitching this or trimming this at a point instead of just a diagonal or a rounded corner. This point will allow them to slide it under the lip a little bit easier in that slot for the lanyard strap. A little bit of heat applied to the ends of the strap will help prevent fraying. And you'll just thread the strap through to ensure that you have a large enough opening for the lanyard strap. You'll want to ensure that this lanyard strap has been properly installed onto the liner for the patient. If you have any other questions concerning how to properly fabricate the suction lanyard drop-in system, then please reach out to our team. After these steps, you'll attach all of your distal componentry as typical. Reach out to us at coyote.us for any additional questions or concerns.